It is my privilege this morning to introduce someone who needs no introduction. You know who Chuck Murphy is. You know that for over a decade, he has led first in the convening and then the chairing of First Promise, and then in the establishment and growth of the Anglican Mission in the Americas. And if you were here last night, you know what fuels that passion. It is his love for the gospel and his personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That passion has shaped us as a mission, so that the calling of the Anglican Mission is not simply to preserve biblical truth in an Anglican tradition, but to see the very gospel of Christ carried around this continent and beyond, that people might be brought into a relationship with Jesus. But what is Bishop Murphy like when he's off the platform? What is he like when it's just a conversation between 2 or 3 people? For the last 3 years, I've had the privilege of serving on the board of governance for the Anglican Mission in the Americas, and I've seen firsthand what Bishop Murphy is like. For Bishop Murphy, what he does is not just a job. Up front, I have seen his love for Jesus Christ. As far as Bishop Murphy goes, it's really about Jesus. It's not about Chuck. Beyond that, I have seen his sense of humor, his integrity, his humility, his vision, his willing to sacrifice. A very wise man once said to me that you can see the reality of a man's ministry on the face of his wife. I know Margaret Murphy, and I have seen on her face the reality of Bishop Murphy's ministry. And Margaret, I want to thank you too for the sacrifice and the love that you have poured out, for the freedom that you have given Chuck to fulfill the calling that God has put on his life. And now, welcome with me, Chuck Murphy. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Sally Breedlove. Those were very generous and kind words. The work we do is a joy for all of us, and God has got me in a particular role right now, but that role is a privilege, and it's a privilege to be a part of a team like the people gathered and assembled in this room right now. We have done these winter conferences now for 9 years, and so those of you that have been able to come to winter conferences know something of what I try to do in this chairman's address. It is simply give you an overview, a catch-up of what's happened and what we're up to. It is to, once again, cast that vision that God has given us and to usually cast it in a way that's a bit different from the last time. I told Margaret it's a little bit like preaching Easter services. Every Easter, it's kind of the same text and the same thing, but you try to wrap it up, mix it up, and change it up in such a way that at the end of the day, you got the message, but it didn't change from the previous Easter. And that's what we do at Winter Conference. It is a vision God has given us. It's something we're all captured and caught up in right now, and it's a privilege to be a part of this thing. By God's grace, I would have to say that things continue to develop. And the Winter Conference, to some extent, it reflects that. So we have these huge crowds that keep coming out. Even though the weather was poor yesterday and airports were shut down, people continue to flow in here. Right now, my understanding is we have over 1,200 people that have registered for the Winter Conference. Once again, it's an amazing thing. To give us a perspective, 3 years ago, I was celebrating the fact that we had over 800 people all gathered together for the Winter Conference. But God continues to give it this strength and allows us to grow and increase, as promised in the gospel lessons that we heard last night in John 15. We've come, I understand, from 35 different states and the Washington, D.C. area. We've come from east to west, California to the East Coast, from the north to the south. 7 different countries are reflected here. Countries in North America, of course, Africa, countries in Israel, frankly. Countries around the world have gathered. We've got 4 diocesan bishops from Rwanda that have come in, including the newly consecrated Bishop Nathan. This is his first chance to come here in this role that he has. We've got the retired bishops from Southeast Asia, Moses Tay and Young. They are Archbishop Young. They are with us every year, and I'm so grateful for that and the witness that they have borne and the strength that they have exhibited in going through sometimes very difficult and challenging times. We have cut back this year on the international guests that we invited, and that's not a comment on their support. It's simply to say that the 10th anniversary is coming up next year, and it is expensive to fly in folks from all over the world, usually up to $100,000 winter conference, and so we just felt like this would be a good year to sort of turn inward and look at what we're doing here and focus here. But we're very grateful for the international guests that have come and have been a part of last night's service and then this week together at the winter conference. Many of the guys that are in the international team that have supported us over the years actually were with us 6 months ago at the Jerusalem GAFCON conference. So I know that they support us. We'll be back, and I want you to understand why we cut back some this year. But among the leaders we've got in North America are, as you saw last night, Bishop Bob Duncan. We will have, if he's not here yet, I understand David Anderson representing the AAC as well as Cana. And I understand we're going to have Martin Menz here, Bishop Menz as well. John Guernsey tells me he cannot get here for some reason, but he intended to be here. You saw and met Bishop Don Harvey last night. And so we've got many of the leaders of the Anglican Church in North America with us, and you'll have a chance to bump into them and talk with them throughout the conference. And tomorrow afternoon we'll have a chance to hear from them in a panel that we've got set up, a panel discussion that will help us to better understand what God is doing with the Anglican Church in North America. I want to say something. I want to note something today that is worth noting, I believe. It was exactly 9 years ago today, 9 years ago this very day, that January 29th, 2000, that the Singapore consecrations took place. They were remarkable. Right here, 9 years ago, the leadership of Rwanda and Southeast Asia did something that really did change the landscape of the work that God was doing through an Anglican witness in North America. I remember standing on the 66th floor of the Westin Hotel, which it is the tallest hotel in the world, and you could look down below and see St. Andrew's Cathedral below, and out beyond that, the sea, the ocean itself. And I was looking down about a few hours before I had come to realize, because the decision was made earlier that day, that they were going to go forward with these consecrations, the Singapore consecrations, with or without the support of the Archbishop of Canterbury. As it turns out, it was without the support of the Archbishop of Canterbury, but anyway, but they were going to go forward with these consecrations. And I remember telling Margaret, I'm just a rector of a little church in Pawleys Island, South Carolina, but our lives are going to change dramatically. And I knew it was prophetic when I said it with the internal thoughts just flooding through my head, because what will this mean? What will this do? What shape will it take? My sense was simply that God had orchestrated this, that godly leaders, Archbishops Collini and Tay, had come through prayer to a decision following on a number of international meetings that had taken place in Singapore and in Kampala, Uganda, and other places, that it was time for action and it was time to do something. And they were prepared to do it. Now, talk about growing out on a limb. That's what I felt we were doing, moving way out on the edges of this limb. But God would have us do this. So Archbishop Collini and Moses Tay and later Archbishop Young, but they were enraging George Carey, the Archbishop of Canterbury at the time, getting very testy letters back and forth and things were going on. We had the leadership of the House of Bishops in Rwanda. Also, there are other bishops like John Rashahana, and these men were going to do something. the retired bishops from America, both Fitz Allison and Alec Dixon were there, and Bishop David Pitches in England, and Charlie Wood at the time. Everyone was together, and then you had John Rogers and me. And here we go. John is a legend, been around since Abraham, and we were going to do this thing together. And then you had this motley crew, a huge cathedral, probably could seat 1,000. There must have been 50 people there, maybe not 50, maybe 35. But anyway, it was a little team of folks. The Barnums were there. William Beasley was there. They had a group of people that were there, and we were going to do this thing, and we did. But I have to say that God used that moment 9 years ago this very day powerfully. He did. Looking back, I can tell you that God used that tiny beginning to start a mission that has moved across North America and is frankly known around the world now. One of the people that I was thrown with 33, 34, 35 years ago when I was studying under J.I. Packer was the Reverend Malcolm Whitcomb, who's actually here too. I've yet to bump into him, but I talked to him on the phone last night. And he was the rector of a church in downtown Bristol, England, and we went to that church. It's a very alive, very powerful gospel church. I just loved the experience. And he was so generous to Margaret and me when we were just getting started in our 20s. And one of the things he gave me as we left and returned home to study in America was a text from Joshua 1:7. And that text has been embedded in my heart, and frankly, it has shaped my ministry. And Malcolm pointed it out to me that what was being said was that we were to only be strong and very courageous, careful to observe all that my servant Moses has commanded, turning neither to the right nor to the left. And get this, you will have success wherever you go. Now, when you read John 15, you hear about all the fruit that's going to be born when you pattern your life in a certain direction. Then you combine that with Joshua 1:7. You start saying, I'm expecting things. I'm getting ready to go in the ministry. I'm expecting something to take place and to happen. And I can tell you, God has met those expectations and beyond. It is incredible. The ring that I was given at my consecration has Joshua 1:7 embedded in it. It has been something that has shaped my entire life and ministry. It is something that is a part of the way I approach life and ministry with great expectations. If we just stay focused, don't turn to the left or the right, trust God, we will have success wherever we go. And so it's been about, for me, trusting God, do ridiculous things He's asked me to do in parish ministry and beyond, and certainly with First Promise and the Anglican Mission. It's been about being strong and very courageous. Any one of us can get nervous and rattled if we wanted to, but God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but of power and love and sound mind. And so that's the way I'm going with this thing. And for 33 years, it has shaped my life. And risking our job to do our job, that's a part of it. Yeah, we risk our job to do our job. We signed up for this. This is what we're going to do. And it's been about experiencing, I got to tell you, success. I look back at 9 years of this and say, God's promise is true. God's word is true. And He said, you will have success wherever you go. Do this thing, Anglican Mission in America, and I will carry you. And I will make this happen. And so I want to argue. I have a little print someone gave me that hangs on the wall in my office in Pawleys Island. And it basically says, why not go out on a limb? Isn't that where all the fruit is? And it's so very true. And so we've lived out on a limb. We've done so many exciting, challenging things. And God has done a remarkable thing with us. Well, let me tell you what I saw about 9 years ago. The vision is clear and it's focused, and 9 years ago today, it began to take form and take shape. And it still is clear and focused.